Breaking news out of Israel this afternoon. Missiles have been launched from Iran to Israel, according to a statement from the Israeli Defense Forces. Now, earlier, the U.S. said it believed Iran was preparing for an imminent ballistic missile attack, which is actually occurring as we speak. This following Israel's launch of a ground operation in southern Lebanon, targeting Iran-backed Hezbollah. Joining us now to discuss all things surrounding this breaking news story is Mr. Michael Pregent. He is with the Hudson Institute and kind enough to join us yet again on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm sorry it's always under these conditions. But
yeah, I got to tell you, this is breaking as we speak. Obviously, we know that ballistic missiles now falling, raining on Tel Aviv. This is the second time which we have seen this. We know that this occurred back on April the 13th. It was not as effective, if you will. What do we should expect during this go-around, sir?
It looks like Iran isn't launching as many as they did on April 19th. So they're being intercepted. We are seeing some that are hitting the ground, but those are ones that have been assessed to not be headed towards population centers. So they're allowing those to hit. Right now, this is Iran's response not only for the Nasrallah attack, which killed Iranian advisors from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, but it's also Iran's retaliation for the Hamas leader being killed in Tehran about a month ago, Haniyeh. So this is the much anticipated Iranian retaliation that we've been waiting for almost 45 days. And this one follows closely the Nasrallah assassination or targeting.
Now, obviously, as you stated, this is what we have been waiting for, but we also know that both Israel and the U.S., in essence, told Iran not to respond. Now that this has happened, what do you think, sir, the response will be from the Israelis, along with us right here in the U.S.?
Well, the last attack, April 19th, it was telegraphed. We knew it was coming. Israel knew it was coming. The U.S. was able to get fighter jets in the air, along with Saudi Arabia, the U.K., and Jordan. And they were able to take down the majority of the rockets, missiles, and drones. And the only fatality was a young Bedouin girl that basically was injured by the debris falling from the air. What I do expect this time, this is a face-saving gesture again by Iran, launching ballistic missiles that will be taken out, but I think this time is different. After the Nasrallah strike in Lebanon, I do see the IDF willing to conduct attacks inside of Iran against Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps facilities, and Netanyahu actually sent a message to the Iranian people talking about a change that is coming inside of their country. And it sounds a lot like what the IDF was able to do to Nasrallah inside of Lebanon. So I do expect the IDF to conduct attacks inside of Iran.
Yeah, as you heard me make mention, they are firing, they being Iran, ballistic missiles. These are, to my understanding, the most dangerous and the fastest missiles that they currently have. We do know that interceptors, as you have stated, sir, have been actually intercepting the majority of these missiles, but truly troubling yet again for those in Tel Aviv.
Yes, it's a 12-minute flight time for these ballistic missiles. What we're really concerned about is whether or not Russia gives Iran a hypersonic missile capability. And that would be devastating because those missiles would hit Israel within minutes. But it'd be harder to intercept those. So Israel's looking at that, so is the U.S., to make sure that doesn't happen. But I would anticipate that if Israel gets enough intelligence to where Russia has provided Iran with hypersonic missiles, that Israel will conduct preemptive strikes inside of Iran to take out those systems.
Yeah, obviously throwing Russia in the mix makes it just much more complicated. If that were to be the case, what do you think the reaction will be for the U.S. immediately thereafter?
Well, the U.S. could put a lot of economic pressure on Russia, by partnering with our European allies. But we've already seen Iran provide drones to Russia to be used in Ukraine. So we need to do more to not only hold Tehran responsible for what its proxies are doing, meaning the United States and our European allies, but to ensure that these weapon system transfers from Iran to Russia and Russia to Iran don't happen, that we do something about it. But we haven't done anything about the drones, but we definitely need to do something about these hypersonic missiles because Iran is asking for them.
Yeah.
And that is a game changer. That is a red line.
We're getting reports that it appears as though it's as if it's a fireworks display over Tel Aviv right now. This has been happening, I guess, a little over a half an hour. Typically, how long does an attack happen?
Well, it was about a 20-minute period in April for the 300 missiles, rockets, and cruise missiles. They were launched at different times. The cruise missiles the drones take about, I think, 3 hours to get to their target, and then the ballistic missiles followed. What we're not seeing here, which is really important, is that Hezbollah is not conducting a coordinated strike at the same time that Iran is. That would be devastating. That could possibly overwhelm the Iron Dome, overwhelm the Arrow system, overwhelm David's Sling. Those higher tier air defense assets are being used against Iran's capabilities, but if Hezbollah was to conduct a simultaneous attack, that would be devastating. Now, that's why it's important that Israel has been conducting these preemptive attacks inside of Lebanon over the last month, to include decimating Hezbollah leadership, I mean, all the way down to the team level. What that means is if you had a leader in charge of 10 people, even that leader was killed or targeted during Israel's pager radio and handheld radio cell phone attack that decimated the command and control of Hezbollah. So it's a good thing that Hezbollah cannot operate the way they would have been able to operate 2 weeks ago, because if they would coordinate these strikes, this could be overwhelming for Israel.
Obviously, a simultaneous attack would be devastating. Once again, we are speaking with Mr. Michael Pregent. He is with the Hudson Institute. As I stated, Iran now firing ballistic missiles into Israel. We do know that for the most part they have not been successful. With that being said, it's sort of like a moot point, if you will. The question arises yet again, why respond in this manner? It's not working for Iran.
It's a face-saving gesture, Guy. This is what Iran does. After we killed Qasem Soleimani on January 2nd, 2020, Iran coordinated a strike against an empty base inside of Iraq as an off-ramp, as a face-saving gesture. The April 19th attack was a face-saving gesture. Every rocket, missile, and drone was shot down, and the only fatality, as I mentioned before, was that young Bedouin girl who died. This strike is something that its proxies are demanding, because Hamas has been decimated, Hezbollah's leadership has been decimated, and they keep looking over their left shoulder and saying, Iran, where are you in this fight? So this is their response. It's a face-saving gesture. It's something that Israel can easily handle. I mean, we're seeing live photos of people on the ground reacting to this Jaffa shooting in Tel Aviv while these rockets and missiles are raining down, because they have that much confidence in their air defense assets to shoot down these slow-moving drones, slow-moving cruise missiles, and these ballistic missiles. So it's a face-saving gesture is what I think it is.
Yeah, you touched on it briefly, and that is the crisis that's currently taking place not too far in Lebanon. Of course, we know that Israel and Lebanon, butting heads, if you will, also looking forward to a potential ground invasion. What are you hearing about this, sir?
Well, this whole campaign that Israel has put in place over the last month in Lebanon was to be able to push Hezbollah, north of the Litani River, right, the Litani line. That's the most important demilitarized zone that provides safety to Israeli citizens in North Israel. We have to remember it's 60 to 80,000 Israelis have been displaced. They can't go to school. They can't go back into their homes because of this constant bombardment by Lebanese Hezbollah. So what Israel has done is they've decimated the leadership. They've taken out a lot of the cruise missiles and missile sites in southern Lebanon, and now they're going in to make sure that they can't resupply, refit, and rearm those Hezbollah locations where they continue to launch rockets, mortars, drones, and missiles at Israeli citizens. So this limited incursion is to basically take away Hezbollah's capability in southern Lebanon, and it will be effective. It's necessary, and there's nobody better at this than the IDF.
over Tel Aviv, where we were seeing earlier missiles dropping as if it happened to be fireworks. This is something that we were expecting to take place, but not in essence so soon. As you stated, Mr. Pregent, this is something that will obviously have a retaliation in some way, form, or fashion. The question is, how soon will that happen? And I think that happens to be the million-dollar question right now. Do you think we'll see it within the next 24 to 48 hours?
Well, I think the United States is going to put pressure on Israel not to respond because, as we can see, the skies now seem to be clear. The attack seems to be over. The Iron Dome, the Arrow 3 system, and David Sling were effective in shooting down the rockets and missiles. We're seeing multiple screens. I'm looking at different screens on Israel right now, in Israel, and we're not seeing any incoming. So that's a good thing. So the U.S. will put pressure on Tel Aviv not to respond to this face-saving gesture by Iran, but Israel will. We have to remember Israel demonstrated the capability to hit Iran's most sensitive sites in the center of the country without being detected. And that was the response to the April 19th attack. It was that one strike against a secure facility in Natanz, Iran, where they have their nuclear facility. Yeah. And Israel was able to do that undetected. That's a big deal. What I think Israel's going to do this time, I think Israel's going to conduct strikes much like they did in Lebanon against key leadership inside of the Revolutionary Guard Corps and also key members close to the supreme leader, because that's the message that they have to send here. This war would stop tomorrow if Tehran told Hezbollah to stop, and Tehran told Hamas to stop, and Tehran told the Houthis to stop, and that's not happening. So Israel's trying to make it happen.
Once again, we're taking a live look at a live feed of Tel Aviv right now, where, as you stated, I apologize? Jerusalem, stand corrected, yeah. Where, as we could now see, it appears, Mr. Pregent, that it is back to business as usual. We can actually see cars moving back and forth. Quite honestly, had we not known that there happened to be an attack several minutes ago, I would say it looks just pretty much regular. With that being said, we know that there happens to be a psychological effect on those that happen to be within that city. I can only imagine what one is going through at this point. How will that play out as well as we look to see what happens in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv as well?
I was in Jerusalem 10 days ago, and we were expecting this imminent attack by Iran the whole time. We went into Gaza, we went into Rafah, we saw what the IDF was doing against Hamas. And I'll tell you, it's one of the most resilient populations I've ever seen. People still working out after an attack, going to the beach, going shopping. As you can see in Jerusalem right now, nobody turned the lights off. The city didn't shut down the power. It's life as usual. I was in Israel in 2000, and there was an explosion, and all the Americans, I was in the military at the time, we all ducked. And the Israelis like, what are you doing? That explosion several blocks up the road. We're okay. And we asked them, how do you live like this? This is every day for us. You love the people you love harder than you ever loved them. You hold them tight. You live life, and it's a resilient community. The area of Jaffa, where this attack took place, is an incredible area where Arabs and Israelis and everyone lives together. Everyone's on the beach. You cannot find this in the Middle East, but you can find this in Israel. And they are back tonight. They'll be back tomorrow. And yes, there are targets of opportunity for terrorists because people will not hide in their homes. But this population is so resilient. They were attacked tonight with both rockets and missiles from Iran. They've been attacked the last 10 months, 11 months by Hezbollah and Hamas. And they just had a terrorist attack. A couple guys with guns shooting people in Jaffa that were out at a cafe, in a popular restaurant cafe district, and they'll be out again. It's a resilient people, and they set a good example for the rest of us to follow.
Obviously, we are awaiting a press briefing from the State Department. When that happens, we're going to take that live right here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Before we let you go, Mr. Pregent, you heard me make mention of the interceptors that happen to be doing just that, intercepting the missiles earlier. A lot of folks wondering, how many do the Israelis have, and how long would they need to have them in order for them to be effective?
Well, I'm sure that's really classified because they don't want to ever tell the enemy that they're running out. And that's why it's so important for our European allies, like the UK, to continue to send defensive weapons to Israel. We have to remember that Israel is fighting against designated terrorist organizations that are targeting a civilian population. And Israel needs the munitions to rearm those air defenses. We cannot have members of Congress say that Israel should not be able to defend itself from rockets, missiles, drones, and cruise missiles directed by Iran. So it's very important that they keep their stockpiles, and I know they're doing that, but that they continue to be replenished. They need to, I think Israel's learning fast that they need to be able to develop their own capabilities, create, build their own missiles and rockets and jets and everything else, because at some point, depending on the political climate in Europe or the United States, they could be left on their own. And they felt very isolated during this, during the last 11 months. And they've taken this fight into their own hands. And they are demonstrating the capability to do things we didn't think they would be able to do. And I'm referencing what they did to Hezbollah, Iran's premier proxy in the region. Its command and control was decimated. We have a theory in the military, or a saying called whack-a-mole, right? If you kill Osama bin Laden, somebody's simply going to replace him. If you kill Zarqawi, somebody's going to replace him. If you kill Baghdadi, somebody's going to replace him. What Israel did was they killed all the replacements as a warning to the leader, and then they took out Nasrallah. So anybody who's taken over Hezbollah at this point was probably the 20th pick, the 20th choice, because everybody above that was killed.
Obviously, yet again, a very fluid situation taking place in Jerusalem right now, where it appears there are no more missiles, ballistic missiles at that, being fired into the city. We are awaiting a press briefing once again from the State Department, and when that happens, we're going to take that live right here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. We have been speaking with Mr. Michael Pregent. He is with the Hudson Institute and kind enough to join us right here on the Live Zone. Truly appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.